This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Opening half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, online, sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way, whether it happens to be routine, difficult inspections, quick lane. It is all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online, sunburymotors.com. Great news that Dick Purnell is going to be honored by the National Football Foundation local chapter in State College coming up on Sunday. Dave Ritchie's here to talk about it. Chief, how you been?
I'm doing good, Steve. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good.
What do you think this honor means, not just for everybody that around him, but also for the community that this happened?
Well, Dick has been in a lot of Hall of Fames, but this one is pretty awesome, and it's a lifetime achievement. And if you stop and think about all the people that played football with him or for him, and of course he also coached down at Susquehanna, so there was just another generation there too. I'm just happy to see it because he deserves a lot of recognition because he was I think he was ahead of his time in a lot of things. And I know that I played for him, and I don't think I would have wanted to play for anybody else.
You said he was ahead of his time. In what ways was he ahead of his time?
Well, back before we had when you had a computer that took up the entire room in the school, Dick actually used the computer to we'd scout. I forgot to tell you, I coached with him for a long time, or for him. And we would scout every team and have, 5 or 6 games on them, and he'd run all their plays through the computer, and we got tendencies, and it helped a lot. I know it helped. It helped a lot of times, especially against Hazleton. You had an idea where people were going to be, so you could set up your defense, and that wasn't being done by many people back in those days. I guess he was. That's why I meant he was ahead of his time.
You said you wouldn't play for anybody else. What were the qualities that he had that really made you a better person when it was all said and done?
I think of him a lot like my father. The older I got, the smarter Coach Purnell got. All right, and I sat back and I thought about a lot of the experiences I had with him. I taught with him for 20 years, and we both taught mathematics, and he took an interest in what we all did. I thought we were never, ever, ever not prepared to play a football game. He was meticulous. I remember on Thursdays in the walkthroughs, he went right down to the having the third team extra point group go out and make sure they got on the field at the time. We ran our offense and defenses. It wasn't as complicated as things are today, but it was solid, and we had the proper coaching from the backs down to the linemen. It was just, I don't know. I just remember that he coached against Bill Flynn. He coached against George Curry. He coached against Dave Six. He coached against Joe Diminick. And those guys are also number one coaches. And I would say that he won the majority of those games. So I'm just impressed with his knowledge. And I'll tell you something else that I liked about Coach. Tuesday and Wednesday practices were usually our most physical, but he never, ever, ever I would say, make that physical that we weren't able to play on a Friday night. He said, we'll do our contact on Friday night. And even though we at the time thought it was physical. I know from coaching with him all those years that he took that into consideration too. So, like I said, I got one story for you. Years after I was coaching with him and teaching, my daughter was going to go to college, and I was fretting around about, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to pay for it? And I remember to this day, we were up in the math office. He said to me, he said, "David, do you think you're the first person that ever had to put their kid through school?" And that put things into perspective. So, I mean, he had a lot of those things. I learned a lot about life from him too, and how to handle situations.
What was he like as a math teacher?
I had him in school. I liked him. I did. He taught me algebra too, and his basic style. When he went over the new topic, gave the homework. After the '90s, Dick was very, very important in getting us into a new math program. John Saxton wrote a math program, which was a lot like coaching, where you learn something and you practice it. And the next day you learn something new and you practice both of them, and you just kept doing that until you got through the entire concepts in a particular course. I think that Dick, when he was as he got older, he became a much better teacher. I really do, and I will always wanted to thank him because that was a nice program that we had. He took an interest in things. I mean, a lot of times you get to the end of your teaching career, I'm just going to ride these things out. Well, Dick never did that. Never did. He always was involved with our curriculum and always involved with our kids too.
How much better of a coach do you become because you are a teacher on an everyday basis?
Well, number one, and you get to see your kids all the time. Mm-hmm. And right now they say at Shikellamy, some of the best athletes are just walking around in the halls. They're not out for sports. Well, back when I started coaching for him in 1978, and he had a terrific staff. He had 4 physical education teachers on his staff, and they were very crucial in getting kids out. And you also as a teacher, you got a much better look at a kid. You saw him in the school atmosphere, not just out on the field, and you had a better idea of how you could handle him, how you could, if he got himself into a spot. Sometimes kids need to be babied or pampered, and other ones need to be, give the riot act. And it's just one of those things that being a teacher you were allowed to do. You saw them 8 hours a day plus maybe 2 hours of practice. So, it becomes almost like a bonding issue too. And I think that's one of the things that's missing in coaching now, because I know that it's getting harder and harder to get teachers to be involved in coaching. And so you have people that are there, they work jobs, they're only there at practice, and it becomes very hard for them to coach too.
Well, obviously a great career for him. What would you say on the field? What was the signature moment of his Shikellamy career?
Oh, wow. Back in 1965, the Northumberland and Sunbury school districts went together, and you had Pine Knotters and Owls, and that was like trying to mix oil and water. Yeah. And Dick was the coach at Sunbury, and he became the coach at Shikellamy. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were almost 100 kids came out for football that year. That's just unbelievable. All right? But that team went undefeated and won the Southern Division of the Eastern Conference, and then they beat Blakely, which is now Valley View, for the Eastern Conference Championship. And next year they were undefeated, and the next year after that they were undefeated. I think he had 38 straight regular season games where he won, and that just set a precedence. Sometimes just knowing that you were going to play Shikellamy put a team at a disadvantage because of what Dick did as far as a reputation of being just a solid football team.
Well, it's a great honor. It's a tremendous honor, well-deserved, earned along the way, and I'm glad we had a chance, Dave, to talk about it today.
I have one more thing. In my senior year, my recruiting trip to Penn State, I walked in and Coach Paterno was there, and we had played North Schuylkill the night before, And I didn't even tell. He said, "Oh, you're from Shikellamy," and I said, "Yeah." He says that's Dick Purnell's the coach down there. I think he's been coaching longer than I have. All right, and I'm just amazed. You know, you're a 17-year-old kid, and you hear, you know, one of the greatest coaches that ever was involved in football talk about your head coach. It gave me another perspective of just how respected Dick was.
Incredibly respected, well deserved. Chief, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I know this is the most you've talked since August. So,
yeah, you got it. You got it. I understand that.
Appreciate it, Dave. We'll see you soon.
You're welcome.
See you soon.
Thank you, Steve. All right.
You
Take
bet.
care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Just so you know, when Dave does talk, he gives great perspective. The key part is when he's allowed to.
First game I ever covered as a high school reporter, Dick Purnell was the coach.
Yeah?
First playoff game I ever covered. And I saw him last summer at the District 4 Coaches All-Star Game, and he's still pretty intimidating in his 80s.
I've always enjoyed talking to him.
Oh,
Now I'm in a different category because I didn't grow up there, anything like that, you know, and I announce here. So, no offense, not intimidated. He's just a good guy. I just think he's a great guy.
It's funny because my parents are deceased, but my parents had him in high school in the late 60s, and if you have parents or you happen to be that old, you know teachers were much different back then. So they have some fun stories about that too.
I bet they do. I bet they do. Well, we got a lot going on today. It's a full show.
I decided to do some work this week.
Man, we got Gerry coming up in a few minutes, and Rob Krimmel is going to join us, the head basketball coach at St. Francis. And by the way, it looks we are working on, you know, it won't be a long interview, but we're working on getting B.J. Wurzen on from West Shore Homes to talk about the deal that was put together with Penn State for the field and get his perspective on what they did for Penn State football. I thought it'd be nice to hear from him. We've heard from a lot of people this week. How about let's hear from him? Okay. You know, because Joe had an old saying, and this has not been brought up by anybody. I don't understand why it hasn't been brought up. Joe always said, I want your money, but not your 2 cents. Well, BJ put up the money. So we'll talk to him about that. I should have it tied down later today, if you don't mind, Todd.
Okay.
I did mention that Monday would be a really good day, but you know, we'll do that. So, all right, we'll take a break. Boy, it's good to hear Dave's voice, wasn't it? Because like I listened to the high school basketball games. I mean, I barely heard him.
I just saw him last week at some district basketball playoff games when he was suitless. So I have heard his voice lately.
I barely heard him all season. Ever since one guy came back, barely heard him. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hey, where have you been?
I'm laying low.
Laying low?
Yeah, the heat's on because of my new Hyundai from Sunbury Motors. I got $7,000 off on a new Hyundai Santa Fe. They're gonna think I stole it.
Deal's so right, it almost feels wrong. At Sunbury Motors Hyundai. During the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, take $3,500 off, plus 1.99% APR financing for 60 months, or $7,000 off on all 23 of the 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe's available, which start under $40,000. Take up to $10,000 off, or 0% APR financing for 60 months on 7 new Hyundai Ioniqs, starting under $42,000. And as always, military and first responders get an extra $500 off their purchase. Plus, all new Hyundais come with Hyundai Assurance and America's best warranty, 10 years, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Come down to Sunbury Motors Hyundai today, and together we can be alive in 2025. Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
Hi, Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
By the way, the coach's show is tonight, and the guest at 6:30 this evening will be Cale Sanderson. So I'll be sitting down and talking with Cale tonight from the field at Toft Trees. All right. So make sure we mention that. And that is, and again, Cale is scheduled to join us at 6:30 tonight. All right, let's at least get to the tournament action. Then I'll get to the seeds. Well, in fact, let's do the seeds first for wrestling. And the seeds are as follows. Luke Lillidahl, the true freshman's the number 1 seed at 125. He'll get either Caleb Wyand of Michigan State or Marcelo Milani, of Cornell. The winner of that one will face Lillidahl. Braden Davis is number 3 at 133. He's going to get Kurt Phipps of Bucknell in the opening round. Lillidahl, by the way, 7-2 against the field. Davis is 6-4 against the field. Bo Bartlett, number 2 at 141. You get Jordan Titus of West Virginia in the opening round. He is 11-1 against the field. Shane Van Ness, number 3 at 149, gets number 30 Gabe Willichel of Wyoming in the opening round. Van Ness is 11-2 against the field. Tyler Kasich, number 1 at 157. He will get the winner of Richard Badalin of Columbia or Landon Josen of Northern Illinois in the opening round. Kasich is 10-1 against the field. Mitchell Messenbrink, number 1 at 165, gets either Chandler Amaker of Central Michigan or Jared Kessler of Pitt. He is 10-0 against the field. Levi Haynes, number 2 at 174. He'll get number 31 Avery Bassett of Lock Haven in the opening round. Haynes is 9-1 against the field. Carter Starachi, number 1 at 184. He'll get the winner of Caden Rogers of Lehigh or TJ McDonald of Oregon State after that opening round match. Starachi is 9-0 against the field. Josh Barr, number 4 at 197. He is scheduled to get number 29 Tucker Hogan of Lock Haven in the opening round. Barr is 7-3 against the field, his first trip to the NCAAs. Greg Kirkfleet, number 3 at 285, gets Sam Mitchell of Wyoming in the opening round. Kirkfleet is 11-1 against the field. That one, of course, Gable Steveson. So there you go. It'll be next week, and those are the seeds for the NCAA championships in Philadelphia. And it's the basketball tournaments. Oregon leads Indiana 45-40, 14 minutes to play in Indianapolis. BYU at the half leads Iowa State leads BYU 53-49 at the half in Kansas City. Big East at the Garden. St. John's is all over Butler, 53-32 with 13 minutes to play. Duke has been having to fight all day with Georgia Tech. It's 43-40 Duke at the under 12 to go in the game of that one. And Duke, I mean, they've been in a battle with Georgia Tech all day. And again, as I've said once, I've said 100 times, that in these conference tournaments, the team that wins the night before has momentum. Well, Georgia Tech won yesterday, and Duke's been waiting. Suit. He gets time to talk in basketball and football. So wrong. I have to let him talk in basketball. I don't know squat about basketball.
Also, Cooper Flagg was hurt in that game, too.
Oh, was he really?
Hurt his ankle. Helped off the court.
No.
Yeah, not great.
Suit says he doesn't know squat about basketball. Is this the part where we debate the football part? Doug Birdsong, at least the Chief had a strong voice today since he hasn't been able to use it for the last 7 months. Suit, so wrong. It's just an observation.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV, those are just some of our insurance needs, and we have multiple insurance needs. They handle them all, organize them all, make sure you're fully insured, and do everything they can to save you money. All at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Comes one of the best half hours of the month. It's Gerry Dulac, my good friend from Pittsburgh. Welcome back, Gerry. Great to hear from you.
Well, Steve, it's always good to chat with you, my friend, and pleasure being on the show, as you know.
We got a lot to talk about here. I want to start with the Steelers, but I'm going to work my way to the quarterback part. The Metcalf deal, what did that tell everybody about the Steelers when they made that deal?
Well, Rich, it told them, and it told me it too, is that they are very serious about the need to upgrade that receiving room. And I think what underlies some of that is where it positions them to, going forward with George Pickens. I have, since pretty much last season, been, I don't want to say told that he won't be re-signed, but I've been given that impression by the Steelers, and so I think getting Metcalf certainly does that. It puts them, especially when they give him a 5-year deal. Well, there's no way they're going to give George Pickens a big deal after this year. One, because it would be, financially difficult, but two, the guy has a lot of issues, and we've seen them all. And I don't think they want to give a guy like, if he's behaving like that on his first contract, how do you think he's going to be if he gets a monster contract? And the Steelers are well aware of that. They learned their lesson with Antonio Brown. I don't see him getting a second contract with this team, and that's why I think the Metcalf trade puts them in position to be able to move on from George Pickens at some point. I don't know that it's going to be anytime soon because, look, they're going to go into next year. If your room is George Pickens and DK Metcalf, you get Roman Wilson back, who I know you're very familiar with from the Big Ten, and now they'll draft a wide receiver too, probably by day 2. And now all of a sudden you're looking at a fairly talented deep receiving room. And so I was surprised at the amount of money. Steve, that kind of blew me away. $30 million average, $150 million total. Obviously, the largest contract they've ever given anyone. That was a little surprising to me. I didn't think that they would make that kind of deal with anybody.
Right. Now, the running back part of it, Najee Harris ends up going to the Chargers, so he doesn't get his second contract, goes to the Chargers. Warren's there. Then Kenny Gainwell was signed. Is that workable enough for what the Steelers want to do?
No, Richard. First off, I didn't expect him to sign Najee Harris because when they declined his fifth-year option, that would have cost them $6.9 million or 6.7. Then they knew on the free agent market he would get somewhere between 7 and 10, and for 1 year he got $9.25 million. So they just weren't going to pay that. Najee Harris has 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, never missed a game. There is no question his durability with the amount of pounding that guy takes is extremely impressive, and that's pretty darn good productivity. But, he's not that game-breaking type of back. He's not a guy, with the greatest vision. I say that because the Steelers would have, they want a guy with a little better vision that hits the holes a little faster. And I don't think that was Najee's specialty. And I don't want to take away from what the guy was able to do, but they just thought they're not going to commit that kind of money. Plus, Arthur Smith likes Jaylen Warren. But to your point, Rich, I think you will see them take a running back by round 4 in this draft.
Right. Then they also signed Darius Slay. So what does that do to the secondary? I mean, he's obviously on the back, more the sunset of his career than anything. But what about that deal?
Yeah, Steve, it was told to me that Darius Slay is Joe Hayden with speed, and he still has it at age 34. So, so you're seeing a bit of a theme here. Go back to Russell Wilson. You look at Cordero Patterson. They're flirting with Aaron Rodgers. Of course, they're doing more than flirting. And Darius Slay, you're talking a lot of older players. And a lot of that, Steve, is their desire to get moving now. Yeah, I know they've been in the playoffs for the last 5 years. They're not some moribund franchise that the sky is falling. But they need. It's why they brought in Russell Wilson last year. They wanted to. First things first. Let's win a playoff game and let's get this thing back on track. Right. And the same thinking is in place now with Aaron Rodgers and maybe a Darius Slay. They want to get guys who can play immediately and contribute immediately and maybe help them win a playoff game, immediately and finally. And I think that is what is in play here. And then, but you got to be real careful. You don't want to do that by sacrificing youth. But, they rebuilt their offensive line with youth. I think their plan is to do it with the defensive line. If it isn't, shame on them because that's the biggest weakness on the team. But I think you see these older veterans, they're brought in for one reason, Steve.
It's a great point. Now we're going to get to the quarterback part. Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph, no offense, do not appear to be the solutions. But it's not like they can't do things, but they're not the solutions. So between Russell Wilson and, of course, the rampant Aaron Rodgers rumors, what do you know about that situation at this stage?
Well, I will tell you that Mason Rudolph was, they keep coming back to him, but and I understand, rightfully so. They shouldn't have kind of dumped on him the way they did, in all honesty. But they brought him back to be a backup. They didn't bring him in to be their starting quarterback. And they are waiting on Aaron Rodgers. I was told late last night, Steve, that it is not about money. It's just waiting for him to make a decision. And waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision is, how precarious that can be. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's prone to bizarre behavior, which Steve, excuse me, and I called you Rich now twice because I was just on the Rich Eisen show, so I apologize.
That's fine.
But I think he could decide to retire, and then where would they be? And then they would go back to Russell Wilson, which was always an option. But Russell Wilson is he's visiting the Browns today. And supposedly the Giants tomorrow. And to me, knowing Russell and his people, that tells me that he is tired of waiting on the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers as well. Russell Wilson would like to return to the Steelers. He has all along. But obviously, that was an option for the Steelers, but I think it was down the totem pole just a little bit.
Okay. So is there any free agent signing that's happened to this point, even outside the Steelers, that surprised you, or has everything gone pretty close to what you might have thought?
Well, I will, I'm never surprised at anything that happens at free agency, Steve, because it points up the desperate nature of general managers who are trying to show their owners and fan base that they're serious about getting better. So you see the Jets, who rank right up there with the Cleveland Browns as the most dysfunctional franchise in the NFL, giving Justin Fields $40 million over 2 years. This is a guy who won 10 games in 3 years in Chicago, and then played only 6 games this past year, and yet they're going to give him that kind of money. And so he wanted to test the free agent market, and the Steelers thought, okay, you're going to go ahead. If you're going to, that's what you want to do. And you know what? I mean, he certainly played his cards right, but I mean the Jets, and again, it's the Jets, and we'll see if they're right. $40 million over 2 years with $30 million guaranteed is just it's a bit extreme for a quarterback who has done very little and in 4 years in the NFL. I think the Patriots, again, talking about desperate measures, giving Milton Williams $104 million. When he's about the third or fourth best lineman on that team, but he had a big Super Bowl. Just another example of teams. Oh, it happens every year. Overpaying players, but I don't blame any of them for wanting to test the market because they know that money is out there.
I've got to ask you some golf here because the Players is going on right now, but I want to go back to the Arnold Palmer. When you are fighting for TV ratings, can you explain to me why Jordan Spieth is not on your list of players that you at least somehow figure out how to get into the field?
Yeah, and not just TV ratings. I think attendance at the events. Now granted, that was a signature event, so they were going to get a good field. But not inviting Jordan Spieth or giving him an exemption and Ricky Fowler, to me, is just a stupid move as well. I agree. It is Jordan Spieth, because if Jordan Spieth would start winning again, as he did before, he is the most popular American player by far, understanding that Tiger doesn't play anymore. So, I don't know. I can promise you Arnold wouldn't have done that. But, Arnold's not here anymore. And so, it was surprising to me that they didn't allow him and invite him into the field.
Because you and I both know, as a tour, they're struggling right now. The live thing has hurt them, and the star power. I mean, there's going to be no issue at Oakmont. All the stars are going to be there. You qualify, you're in. So, and it's a major. But these other tournaments, I mean, no offense to some fine players. I mean, these are all fine players, but they're not draws.
I agree with you, Steve. And, no matter hey, look, Scotty Scheffler, God bless him, he is the number one player in the world for a reason.
Yeah.
But more people would go follow Rory McIlroy than Scotty Scheffler because, it isn't that he doesn't lack appeal. He's just kind of, and I don't want to say a bland character because he's such a great guy.
Yeah.
But he's not the kind of guy who the people are going to knock down the fences to come see. And even though he is undisputably the best player in the world, Jordan Spieth has that capability. Jordan Spieth moves the needle. And with these elevated events, Rich, sponsors are having a hard time, and it's part of the reason why Honda dropped out after being the longest-running sponsor on tour. If you're not getting an elevated event, even if you do, now you have to come up with more money to pay the winner $4 million. And you have to come up with more money for the overall purse. And if you're not an elevated event, then you're faced with getting a field that's a Corn Ferry Tour field, and then people don't want to come to see that. People aren't going to pay for some of the advertising, the marketing, and corporate sponsorship that they're used to, and so it's become a tough deal all the way around. So, I mean that's what's making life on the tour with the sponsors and the exposure and the popularity, a little troublesome right now, and it's a bit of a problem. It's not in dire straits, but it's not exactly at its peak right now.
And in fact, I would argue that Ricky Fowler probably is a better draw name-wise for what the fans want to go out and see than even a great player like Scotty Scheffler. It's just something about Fowler they love.
Yeah, especially with the young people.
Yeah,
Rich, and that's who Liv is attracting. That's what the TGL is trying to attract. And so Ricky Fowler has that appeal with young people. And that's what they're trying to target. Now, the National Golf Foundation, everybody is trying to target these young, either golfers, aspiring golfers, would-be golfers, or soon-to-be golfers.
Always a pleasure, my friend. You are the best. You know that. Think the world of you and your family, and appreciate the time, as always.
Well, Steve, always enjoy chatting with you. Anytime you dial me up, I love going on with you.
You got thanks, Gerry. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Good talking to you, Steve.
The great Gerry Dulac. Didn't get better than him. And it's great to have him on talking about a wide variety of things. Cooper Flagg is not only out with an injury to his ankle, but instead of giving him crutches, they put him in a wheelchair. Wow. Duke is winning 60-50 over Georgia Tech. And Oregon leads Indiana with 5.5 to play, 59-54. Indiana is right around that cut line area. I don't know. I mean, it's a good game. All of Indiana's losses this year have been quad 1 losses. They have no quad 2s, 3s, or 4s. But it is it would behoove them to win this to feel better about where they are in all of it. We'll take a break. Back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
The Cooper Flagg injury didn't look pretty. But, look, he's got a week to get ready. Duke will be a number 1 seed no matter what they do in this tournament. No matter what, they'll be a number 1 seed. And that's what it comes down to. So, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't see him the rest of the weekend.
Oh, no, I think, look, for John Shire, this is not the end game. Okay? It's not the end game. This is just more games. Now, they're beating Georgia Tech by 10 right now with 3.5 to play. So, today they're fine. St. John's is going to win big. Oregon's got a 3-possession advantage now in Indiana, 61-54 with 3 minutes to play there. Iowa State leads BYU 68-61, but both of those teams are in the NCAAs. But, this is... I haven't really looked at Joe Lenardi's bracketology. Have you?
Not this week, no.
No, I haven't looked at it at this point. I mean, now Rob Krimmel knows he's in. He's joining us in the next half hour. There we go. Here it is. Let's see. Top overall seed Auburn. First team out Texas. Last team in North Carolina. So this is what he has. He says last 4 byes, he has Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Utah State, West Virginia. Now the last 4 in. San Diego State, Indiana, Xavier, North Carolina. First 4 out. And again, Ohio State lost to Iowa last night. They're in the first 4 out. Texas, Ohio State, Boise State, Colorado State. Then even further out are Dayton, Wake Forest, Irvine, and Villanova. The Villanova fans, I think that if they win over UConn today, they're in. Hello? No. You're not. No. Ben Johnson was fired as the head coach at Minnesota at 2 this morning. They flew back last night. When they got off the plane, they thanked him for his service. Yeah. So, Virginia, Ronnie Sanchez, interim coach, I think it was expected he would not make it. He's not going to make it. I mean, Steve Donahue was out at Penn. But Penn has to change how they do things in athletics. Because, first of all, Steve Donahue is, a great guy, and I think he is an excellent coach. I mean, X's, O's, I mean, really. I've always been a big Steve Donahue guy. But the problem he has down at Penn is this. When it comes to admissions, they're making no exceptions for basketball. You either qualify or you don't. Now, idealistically, that's nice. Realistically, no. Because guess who makes exceptions when it comes to basketball? Not dramatic. They're not taking somebody that can barely get, 600 because they can play hoops. All right? But at Yale, which is the favorite to win the Ivy tournament, and has had another great year, at Yale they do. Well, you're not competing on an even field when you do that. Then will you expect the coach to overcome that? Come on. Makes no sense. Makes no sense.
I saw where in the story about the Minnesota firing that Minnesota has more coaches than NCAA tournament wins in the last 20 years.
That's true. Minnesota also has one other problem that is a smaller problem, but it's like creeping up on them. They've been the only Division I team in the state in basketball until now. St. Thomas, which is located just a few miles away. Now, look, they're in the Summit League. I got it. But in a short period of time, they're pretty good. That's interesting. That's interesting. Oregon, 2 minutes ago, up 11 now on Indiana. The fade for the Hoosiers is happening.